Let's look at some of the common problems encountered by new users of SketchUp. I'm going to orbit the axis. The blue axis is up. We can draw in any orientation in space. I'm going to grab the pencil tool and keeping aligned with the axis. On this last line, I'm going to try to make it look correct. But yet, when I go to the top view, you see that that's not a 90-degree angle. So I'll zoom back out and undo a couple steps. This time I'll make sure I'm aligned with the green axis. You need to make sure that you trust the computer, especially in perspective mode. It can be a little deceiving, but notice that all four corners are now square. Okay, let's look at another problem that's quite often happening. It's little line segments. An accidental drag creates a midpoint there, an endpoint there, an endpoint there, a midpoint there. In other words, that little line segment drawn across the top of it broke that main edge into three separate edges. So if I highlight that edge and undo, just takes it away and makes that one edge again. So if you draw a little line segment, just hit undo. Okay, now let's look at drawing vertical lines. I make sure I'm in the blue axis, but on this edge, I'm watching the blue axis carefully, but I don't watch to make sure they're lined up. And at first, it doesn't look like that's going to be a problem. I line that one up to the first edge and draw in the faces, and they close just fine. But let's draw the top edge in. As I align to the axis, it doesn't close. The reason is they're not coplanar. In SketchUp, all edges that bound a surface must remain coplanar. Otherwise, they won't fill in. Now let's look at a handy feature in SketchUp. Color by axis. What this does, I'm going to put it on hidden line. This shows any line or edge that's drawn in the axis direction by the color of that axis. The two top edges of the box are black. So we'll undo back and we'll erase those out. And this time I'll correct it such that that back corner is the same height as the other two edges, vertical edges. And now as I close that back face, that line remains red because it's truly in the red direction, and that one remains green. Let's close the top. And now you notice it does close the shape. This is because all edges are coplanar. So as I finish, it closes the shape completely. If I erase that edge, I can heal that back together by simply drawing it back in. This is true of any forms generated in SketchUp. You can always trace over an edge to recover a form or a surface. Now I'm going to draw across the midpoints and lift this up for a simple roof form. And I'm just going to visually do it thinking that looks okay, but it's not a uniform gable. It's because I didn't watch the axis direction as I lift it up. Now watch as I go up. If I make sure the inference dots are blue and say on axis, now it's a uniform gable. Again, just watching the axis solves the problem. Okay, I'm going to undo and I'm going to draw in from the midpoint, but this time I'm not going to pay attention carefully, and I'm going to draw that slightly off of the midpoint. Now, as I try to move that edge vertically, I can't. That would cause the two surfaces of the roof to become non-planar. So if I triangulate each surface, because by definition a triangle has only three edges, it can't go out of plane, then I can lift it off the surface. But each side of the roof has two planes that are slightly out of whack with each other. So that's how you triangulate something that's non-planar to test it. As I draw that ridge back in, oops, say I draw a little line by accident. How do you get rid of it? Undo. Let's look at a short little line segment, another accident. So I just continue on and draw the second edge in, but when I try to lift it, that little line segment truly stays a little line segment. Again, short lines will kill you in SketchUp. So make sure you undo right away and redraw so you get a continuous edge. So keep it in the red direction. Now we'll lift it up. Now let's say I wanted an overhang. So I just bend it forwards, but it wasn't really bending it forwards because it would have gone out of plane. What I need to do is draw in a fold line so it has some place to bend about, so those two surfaces can become non-planar. So now when I move it, looks okay. Oops, it's still not. Why not? Let's rotate around to the back. We didn't put a fold line in on the back side. In SketchUp, all the geometry is interconnected. So now I have fold lines on either side, so now that ridge can be moved back and forth and folded about there for an overhang. Now it's uniform in slope, and it's a correct overhang. Okay, the biggest problem people have is drawing back to a surface accurately. Watch the axis direction. I'm going to turn off color by axis so you can just see it happen, how it normally would look to you. I'm in the green, I'm in the blue. I start back in the green, everything's great. It touches the surface and turns blue, and I just select real quickly. It didn't close because I slid my mouse as I pushed down back at the surface. Now if I check it, you'll see that that indeed was not a green edge on the top there. So I'm going to erase that and do it again. The safest way to do this is start in the green direction, hold down the Shift key. That locks the inference along the green direction, and now I just touch the surface and click, and it locks it to that surface, guaranteed every time. Let's try it again. I'll go in the red, go back in the green, hold down Shift, touch the surface, click, and I'm assured that it's going to stay in that direction. It's called inference locking. You'll learn about that more later. So again, to reiterate, stay in the axis direction, pay attention to it, avoid your short little line segments. You should do just fine with SketchUp.